See, this is much better. We can actually turn our mics off now and you might be able to hear us from here. All right, it's just gone 11 o'clock, so we will kick off with this morning's session. I'm Shaun Middlebrook. I am a proud Wiradjuri and Yuin man from New South Wales originally, obviously visitor on this country, so I'd like to extend my respects to the country that we're on and to the people. It is such an honour to be working in this environment and to be supporting community and having very important conversations that we need to go into for the future, but also identifying some of the solutions that are happening within our communities and community-led practices that are happening. So welcome this morning. We're in obviously a major concurrent session, Innovative Partnerships Delivering First Nations Housing. Extremely important conversation given what we've heard this morning as well as yesterday, partnerships and how we come together and how we create systems of change and ensuring that the outcomes are there and are being delivered. As part of my acknowledgement, I also would like to acknowledge the lived experience participants that are coming along to to the Uhuru conference this year. The strength and power and commitment and willingness to share your experiences to influence the way that we can deliver housing, but also make sure that your voices are being heard front and centre throughout this entire conference is extremely important to ensure that we're actually delivering the services that are required in community. We are going to hear today from three fantastic speakers who are extremely nervous, so please be gentle. Just to talk about the amazing partnership work that you've been doing over a number of years, and it will be a phenomenal time. So they've all got presentations for you, and we'll go up obviously in order. We have an order that we're going to go in, and then we're going to come back and we're going to sit down and have a conversation. I'm not going to ask as many questions because I think it's important for the people in the audience to have an opportunity to ask as many questions as you possibly can. So we're going to think of this like a yarning circle as opposed to we're sitting up here on stage and you're down on comfortable seats. So we'll kick off first. So the order that we're going to go into, I'd like to introduce our three panels. We have Alisi Tutuila, I knew I was going to mess that up, from Aboriginal Housing Company, Simone Clinch-Moore, who's from, I'm going to do it, Wungening.
How you should pronounce it, yes.
Okay, Aboriginal Corporation, and Akira Monaghan from the Fulcrum Agency. So I'd like to invite Alisi up to present first.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alisi.
Good morning, Perth. Can you hear me well enough? Awesome. Before I start, I'm always privileged to be able to present off my own country. Very proud Worimi woman from Korua. And before I start, I just wanted to take this special pause of thanks to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this beautiful country that we gathered here on today. Acknowledging the Noongar people, my respects always to elders past, present and emerging, whilst acknowledging that continuing connection to country, land and water. Before I start, I want to play a very quick video because I think regardless how deadly I think I can get up here and talk, it doesn't actually articulate, I guess, the significance and the scope of what the Aboriginal Housing Company has actually delivered on the block in Redfern. So I'll start with that video. The Aboriginal Housing Company provides affordable and social housing for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families. Set up in 1973 to deliver affordable housing because of the lack of access to housing for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We received a government grant from the Wungening government to purchase some of the first lot of our terraces. Celebrating our 50th birthday this year and the anniversary is probably one of the most pivotal moments in history, not just for the company but for the community. I myself lived here for many years and there was a lot of struggle to even hold and retain the land. Those that went before me worked very hard to not just maintain the land that we had but to ensure that it wasn't taken because of all the social issues at the time.
I came to Sydney in 1968. I started with the company in 1975. When we first came to Sydney down here on the block, it was a very caring, sharing community. Then the crime started. The drugs started, all that vicious cycle. It was devastating. No one wanted to come to Redfern. It was evil, if you want to say. But many hands have helped to get to where we are today.
The delivery of the Penway project has definitely brought the community and united us. We delivered 62 dwellings for affordable and social housing, the Arts and Cultural Centre and the Tony Mundine Gym. We actually managed to deliver it through a partnership with a private developer, Daycorp, who then went into an additional partnership with a student accommodation provider. We then secured a 99-year lease. It was unlike your traditional builder-developer relationship. Fuad with Daycorp, the team at Daycorp, really allowed us to be part of every step of that process.
We wanted to build a community in a community where we start respecting one another. And as I always say, colour on his skin deep. It's about time we come together as human beings, loving and respecting one another. They come to see the past, right through the present. We've got the timeline of when we started up here, right to where we finished, the Penway project.
We've laid a foundation and a legacy here, and it's the proof in the pudding to be able to go and duplicate this model in other areas. The critical part of this model was the delivery of the diversification of income. Having the activation piece being our commercial precinct enables us to scale and scope this, and this is why we're reaching out to those corporate partners to come on board and private industry to say how can we continue to scale this across our communities in New South Wales, which is where our portfolio sits. Change the Data program was birthed because we understand that unfortunately there are some real disparities, amongst Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, particularly in areas of out-of-home care, which have got, 10 times higher the rate of kids coming into out-of-home care that identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. The unemployment rate is only rising. Incarceration and suicide rates are unfortunately rising. The amount of housing and the demand for housing, our waiting list alone has tripled in the last 12 months. So the Changing the Data initiative is really to focus and really partner with those industry partners, whether it's in the affordable housing space, developing financial literacy programs around home ownership so we can really start to track that medium. Having our Arts and Cultural Centre a place to house some of the programs for our youth, some of the programs around mental health and wellbeing through the approach of art therapy with elders. Some of these programs are tackling some of those issues, and I think we need the support of industry partners, not just from a financial investment, but their industry knowledge and expertise so we can grow the capacity of these programs to change the data once and for all, because the gap's not closing. We believe at the AHC that we're now living our self-determination, and we're quite excited and thrilled at the expansion of these new initiatives and programs we want to run, because that's the expansion of self-determination. We don't need to go and put it into a document because we're living it now.
This is only just the beginning, It's only just the beginning for the future of better things. I had a vision of this place 35 years ago. And every part of that vision, or dream, if you want to say, all is coming to reality.
Thank you. After 52 years of the Aboriginal Housing Company operating and 30 years of chasing, fighting and dreaming of a vision to deliver on the Penway development, 5 years later now, we've got full occupancy right across our commercial and retail, our affordable and social housing, all through the delivery of collaborative partnerships, powerful, meaningful and authentic partnerships that delivered a 99-year ground lease. When I was first given the concept of what a ground lease was, I'd never heard of it before. Maybe the concept in Canberra, but never in the heart of Sydney on prime real estate. When I had to then articulate and translate that 99-year ground lease onto my board of directors and then onto a member base of 100 people, it wasn't, as you can imagine, the easiest thing. But once they realised that the goal and the mission was very simple, we wanted to be able to retain the land that we have fought for so long. We wanted Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to live on that place forever and a day, unencumbered, with no debt, no mortgage attached. And we wanted to be able to deliver a mixed-use model that could offset the subsidies of the social and affordable housing. The Aboriginal Housing Company stopped receiving funding in 2012, and it was very clear after a business plan in 2015 that we had no other choice but to execute on the Pemaway project. In 2017, we were forced into a position where we, after nearly 2 or 3 decades of trying to secure finance, we realised that unless we stood independent and we started to think like a developer and unpack and unlock the value and the potential of our own land, that we would get nowhere and potentially lose the current assets we had. Through market research and analysis, we were able to collaborate with industry experts with an existing DA on our site. We had student accommodation, affordable housing, a 58-place childcare centre, Munjuk, the heart of our place, an arts and cultural centre, as well as a state-of-the-art health and fitness centre. But in our student accommodation precinct, the existing DA only allowed us, because of the planning controls implemented by the previous Frank Sarda government, only allowed us to go up to 7 stories. We had to go and actually negotiate for a modification to our DA to increase the yield of that site from 7 stories to now what we see now, 24 stories. That 24 stories of 695 beds also hosts 110 beds of subsidised housing for our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students for the next 97 years. Outside of that, thank you. Outside of that collaborative partnership, I think the other important thing to mention was the economic advancement opportunities that also stem from that. Unlike, like I said in the video, and I know you probably go, who was that person speaking? Okay, it was me. Probably looks a bit different, but unlike I said in the video, it wasn't like your normal engagement in the development process where you just engage a builder and they just come in and they do the job and they take the headache off you. One of the mentoring aspects and advice they gave us was, because you're driving this level of innovation and it's never been done before across the country, wear the developer's hat. Be a part of every step of the design, the construction, the mobilisation, as well as the execution phase. And when they opened our mindset to that opportunity, we were involved in every single aspect, and it was the most incredible experience. We can sit in a room full of architects now and interpret all their acronyms and developers, and it was the most empowering experience. We weren't just now realising what self-determination and self-governance was. It was being able to apply that to our everyday operations in business, to the offset of subsidies. To give you an example, the Pemaway site alone is not just the only asset portfolio we have. We've got houses right across New South Wales. But the Pemaway site alone, the gap that we close ourselves each year is around $1.9 million. I was often criticised as a very young chair about 10 years ago, why are you building a commercial mixed-use development, Alisi? We're in a housing crisis. Why not more affordable and social housing? But what they didn't understand is because we weren't in receipt of any government funding, that we needed to be able to subsidise, through the commercial precinct and those other business divisions. So what we did was we were very strategic in our business planning. We were able to negotiate in those long-term commercial and retail leases opportunities for our people. Opportunities not just to be engaged in early learning and childcare, not to be engaged just in the student accommodation and the facility management of that building, to be engaged in the sushi shop there and the coffee shop and the convenience store. There was long-term strategic planning and partnerships that was at the forefront. I think the other important thing to mention in this experience, and I hope I'm not going over time, but in this experience for us was that enabling indicator that this may very well be setting the standard of hope for the rest of the nation, that you too can unlock the value of your land. I think one of the biggest issues for the Aboriginal Housing Company, despite government, private developers trying to tell us that the land we had was rubbish, is that we understood that we sat between two of the biggest universities in the city, also across from one of the major train stations, that we were sitting on prime real estate. How do we then duplicate this model right across the country? Having gone through this experience, we now have gone back to the drawing board, revisiting, doing a stock take on all our regional properties and looking at those regional envelopes. How do we now redevelop those envelopes to continue to increase the housing supply? People then say, where to from now? Is that it for the AHC? Now the Pemway project's been delivered? No, it's beyond Pemway now, baby. We're looking at that expansion. Although we're not a community registered housing provider, because we were so focused on just delivering that, we're in the final stages now through a separate subsidiary. First time I've ever mentioned it publicly, Pemway Housing Collective. Keep note of that name, because we're so excited once we get our registration after 52 years of operation to be able to utilise our lived experience, utilise that cultural engagement and use that lens to be able to continue not just to grow, because this housing crisis isn't just about, it's not just attacking our people. It's a bigger issue than us, and we've realised that because it is bigger than us, we want to be able to go and help other communities right across this nation unlock the value of their land. Thank you.
I have a million questions for you, but I'm going to hold them until the very end. Next up we have Simone, who is going to be talking about the Wungening Aboriginal Corporation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Don't know why it started there. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of this beautiful land on which we are meeting on today. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Wooroloo-Bidimaya, but first a bit of an introduction to Wungening Aboriginal Corporation. So my name's Simone Clinch-Moore and I am General Manager of Programs at Wungening. I'm a Budimaya Yamaji woman, born and raised here on Whadjuk Noongar Budja. Excuse me. Wungening is an Aboriginal community-controlled organisation which provides culturally secure, confidential and free of charge services to the Aboriginal community here in Perth metro area. Our vision is a healthy, safe, strong and sustainable Aboriginal community, and our purpose is to provide culturally secure and holistic programs, strategies that inform, educate and address the harmful effects of alcohol and drugs on families, individuals and the wider community. Wungening delivers services in a number of areas, including AOD, housing and homelessness, out-of-home care, FDV, justice and child protection. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about Wooroloo-Bidimaya, or BBM as I will refer to it throughout the presentation. So BBM is a 66-bed facility located in Perth CBD. BBM came around in collaboration with Wungening Aboriginal Corporation, Noongar Mai, which is another Perth-based ACO, and the Department of Communities. So BBM was established to provide culturally appropriate, low barrier, low threshold response to the issue of rough sleeping in the Perth metro area. The name Wooroloo-Bidimaya represents Perth Pathway to Housing and embodies the intent of the service to provide residents with the support they need to transition from homelessness into stable long-term accommodation. So why was BBM needed? The need for an Aboriginal-run, low-barrier, low-threshold accommodation service was highlighted through the increasing numbers of Aboriginal community members experiencing homelessness in the Perth CBD and surrounds. It highlighted gaps in in safe, culturally secure, low barrier transitional accommodation. And it also highlighted that service pathways, short stays without healing supports, limited tenancy readiness and supports. It also kind of gave us an opportunity to bring housing, healing and culture together in one place. The establishment of the service was launched in August 2021 as a key initiative of WA's 10-year strategy on homelessness, as a rapid response to the increase of rough sleepers at the peak of COVID. Department of Communities engaged Aboriginal-owned construction company Carden Construction to undertake the building works to get the site ready in a very short amount of time. The Carden team exceeded 2,000 labour hours in just 13 days, and the opening of BBM coincided with the Homelessness Week 2021. The development of BBM really had partnership at the core of it, and that initiative again was between the Department of Communities, who kind of provided the system stewardship, commissioning and accountability, and escalation pathways. Nyunga Mai, who provide Aboriginal community-controlled housing expertise, tenancy management and pathways to longer-term housing, and Wungening, who provide on-site operations, healing-centred supports, case coordination, cultural safety and stakeholder interface. The roles and responsibilities of each of the three partner agencies really look at the department being accountable for funding, contract oversight and system integration. Nyunga Mai responsible for the tenancy management and property stewardship, and Wungening responsible for the day-to-day service delivery, cultural safety and outcomes. And it also gave us the opportunity to share risk safeguarding, critical incident response and continuous improvement. BBM's model of care, this is a visual of the model, which reflects culturally secure, person-centred pathway to support people experiencing homelessness to find safety, stability and long-term housing. We acknowledge that each person's pathway is unique but interconnected with community and culture. The model is broken down into three key areas. So entry, which is a rapid and supported exit from homelessness through coordinated system responses and priority referrals. Accommodation and support, which is culturally safe, medium long-term lodging and healing supports. This phase focuses on belonging, community and building daily living skills. And then through care, so sustained pathways to housing through Housing First principles and social housing initiatives, ensuring that people don't fall back into homelessness. The journey or theory of change reinforces the success comes from working with, not for, empowering them or our residents to self-determine their goals and transitions. So what we provide at BBM is safe, dignified accommodation. That includes private rooms, shared spaces, including kitchens, bathrooms, laundries and outdoor areas. On-site supports, that includes yarning, counselling, both AOD, mental health, case management, daily living support and weekly community activities. We also have visiting services weekly to BBM, and that can include homeless healthcare, Department of Human Services, Dean Clinic, mental health and AOD services. The warm referrals and pathways, so into housing, so supporting around income, primary health, family and legal. So what does a resident's journey through BBM look like? So BBM's healing journey is grounded in the 6 Noongar seasons, which promote the cycle of change. As depicted on the slide, Jilba represents conception. This signifies the referral and pre-engagement stage. Camberang, which represents birth, which signifies engagement or welcoming into the service. Birak represents youth or knowing, which signifies the first steps towards individuals' healing. Bonaru is adolescence or doing, so stabilisation through safety, sleep, nutrition and health. Jaren is adulthood or maturity, which is about recognising a person's individual pathway, healing pathway. And Makaru is fertility or awareness, ready for the pathway to home. Wungening's change story is a model that describes the way that we work with clients, residents and families, and how this way of working results in changes in thinking, feeling and doing. This contributes to achieving broader goals of an individual. The way that we deliver and think about services is unique. We believe through building authentic connections, flexible services and Aboriginal ways. So what that means, if I break it down, is authentic connections is based on the community we serve, with the lived experience of our own. We develop authentic connections with clients. We walk beside our people every step of their healing journey. Flexible services is our holistic family-centred approach focused on healing the whole person. As such, we deliver flexible, responsive services tailored to the needs and motivations of our clients. Aboriginal Ways is all about our culturally secure services, which are grounded in Aboriginal ways of knowing, doing and being. We are always accountable to our community and committed to making change for Aboriginal people. What we've learnt around how we deliver BBM and the partnerships that it took to develop the service is culture first. Our greatest success has been keeping culture at the centre of everything we do. Every decision, from the layout of the space to who provides support, is grounded in Noongar ways of knowing, being and doing. This cultural grounding fosters trust and healing, creating a space where residents feel seen and safe. Partnership is power. The three-way partnership between Wungening, Noongar Mai and the department has been instrumental. Each partner brings its own strengths, housing expertise, operational delivery and system stewardship. It's the shared accountability and willingness to learn from one another that truly makes BBM, BBM. Flexible and person-led practice. We've learnt that healing and readiness don't fit into neat timeframes. Our flexible approach allows people to move in their own pace, has resulted in more sustainable outcomes and stronger transition to long-term housing. Workforce wellbeing and sustainability. Caring for staff is essential. The work is deeply emotional, and without regular cultural supervision, team debrief and wellbeing supports, burnout would be a real risk. We've built a cultural and reflective space for our team so they can continue to walk alongside residents. Communication and shared understanding. Clarity and transparency between partners has helped prevent duplication and build a mutual respect. We've established formal and informal ways to communicate, regular partnership meeting, shared dashboards and open feedback channels. Every lesson we've learnt has come directly from the people who live, work and heal at BBM. Their voices are what continue to shape BBM's journey. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm up to 2 million questions now, so I think we're going to have to connect after this. So next up, I'd like to invite Akira from the Fulcrum Agency, I had it right the first time, to give us a presentation on your work. Thank you.
Good morning. This is my public speaking debut, and just quietly, I'm shitting myself. So, thank you. And thanks, Shaun, and thanks for a wonderful presentation, Simone and Alisi. My name is Akira Monaghan. I'm an architect and associate at the Fulcrum Agency. I would like to acknowledge Wajak Noongar Budja and Marunara, where I have the privilege of living and working. I pay respects to elders past and present and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Jamukunu Yapalakunu Aboriginal Corporation, or JIAC, is the prescribed body corporate for Madu native title. Madu man Terence Jack is the Heritage and Communities Coordinator at JIAC and was due to speak with me today but unfortunately couldn't make it. He sends his apologies and a video in his absence, which we'll play first.
Hi, I'm Terence Jack. I'm a model man from Wungening. I've worked with JAC for over 4 years. I've been heavily involved with the co-design project. As many people are aware of, we have a national park sitting in the heart of our country. Our aim is to get a joint management of the national park, but also get a native title claim on the national park. It's a process that takes years and years and years. Our aim, because of that, is to start helping, assisting, and looking after the community, the two communities that sits in the national park, and the community called Wungening on the King Stockholm. The co-design process gives the members, the model families in the community to lead. It gives that ownership. When we have that opportunity to have ownership, we actually take it by the hand and and nurture it and develop it. Yeah. Kalameli National Park, Punmu community, and Barnwell community. It was only, we started off with Punmu. Barnwell, we've got some of the problems there is the water. You've got arsenic in the water, because of uranium. That's one of the problems there because they've got to buy the water from the shop. Woor-Dungin, they had a problem with the sewage. When we got the co-design project, that actually helped the community and they started building some of the sewage up. We were up there with the Fulcrum crew, working around all the communities, having a look at the housing, talking to members. We, as a society, like to have our elders close to us. When they get sick, they get moved out to Port Ellen, which is about 6-7 hour drive from Punmu. This co-design actually helping us look after the community, not only that, commit more as a corporation, and also it gives the members that opportunity to have a voice. Let's get this community to a state where it's livable, and not only that, it's getting them to a state where they can grow. And that's the most important thing about our community.
Thank you, TJ. The Fulcrum Agency is a practice of architects, grant writers and project managers. We work exclusively in remote Aboriginal communities. Over the years, we've engineered and re-engineered ourselves to adapt to what remote communities have told us that they need. Consultants who listen, take the time to build relationships, and importantly, are useful. To set the scene, the Māori communities we work with include Kunawarigi, Bangor and Punmu in the eastern Pilbara region of northern WA. This is remote desert country. Punmu and Bangor sit within Kalamili National Park, resulting in some complex land tenure arrangements. Population is highly variable and the numbers of houses vary between 14 and 27. These are community assets and not governments. There is severe crowding, very poor housing conditions, little cyclical maintenance, and a very high need for more and better housing. Our preferred method of engagement is to work directly for Aboriginal communities. In the case of our work in Marunara, that resulted in a long-standing partnership with JIAC. We have found that we are most effective when we can offer a broad range of services, take on very small pieces of work and very large ones, and provide a balance of spending substantial time in community and in conversation while remaining conscious of the urgent need for better houses. The partnership between TFA and JIAC began in 2019 when we provided traditional architectural services for a project in the regional township of Newman. Very quickly though, we moved into housing work, which is a focus for these remote communities. In the early days, while establishing relationships, trust and getting to know one another, TJ and another Māori man, Simon Frank, accompanied us and were indispensable in making introductions, sharing of local information and translation. One notable characteristic of JIACs is how proactive they have been. Instead of taking a reactive approach to funding opportunities, they lay the groundwork well in advance. All of the projects we have worked on, while varying substantially, are of course connected to housing. We spent considerable time in communities, no small feat, given the remoteness and complex logistics. We audited houses, spoke to people, held workshops and barbecues. There was knowledge exchange, co-production and regular communication with all those connected and embedded in community life, health service providers, ranger programs, the school, local government, arts organisations and others. A major piece of work prepared in anticipation of future funding for renovations and new builds was the Māori Housing Design Guide, a co-production effort. The document was developed through extensive community-led co-design processes and captured Māori needs and aspirations. We shared our technical knowledge and Māori determined the key drivers for housing and the design of houses themselves. Having Māori at the centre of decision-making was fundamental to this work. The Housing Guide demonstrates how cultural requirements must drive technical specifications rather than being accommodated within predetermined designs. For example, conventional social housing design prioritises privacy and nuclear family arrangements. Māori family structures, however, require sightlines for supervision of children across extended family groups, flexible sleeping arrangements for seasonal population fluctuations, and specific orientation for cultural protocols around men's and women's spaces. These aren't add-on features, they are drivers of design. When cultural requirements become secondary to mainstream approaches, you are left with houses that are structurally sound but culturally inappropriate, leading to crowding, stress, and a house without longevity. Funding secured in 2022 covered housing repairs and maintenance. The sheer expense of doing this work in these locations meant we had to prioritise some repairs over others. We did this guided by Health Habitat's healthy living practices and by what community were telling us. Safety, security and the functionality of electrical and plumbing systems were top of priority list. Again, proactively, GIAC adopted Health Habitat's Survey Fix program to track the impact of their work. This data would serve as evidence for further funding applications, as they knew this round would only achieve modest repairs. Community members were involved in the surveying of houses. The Survey Fix program itself attempts to train locals in basic maintenance skills. And we also had a Matu liaison working between builder and tenant during this time. Currently, we are in the design stages of delivering major renovations to houses. We hope that this will support Matu in their lives on country and perhaps support a return to country for others. New houses have always been the end goal, and when this happens, these will be built in accordance with the Housing Design Guide. A few final thoughts. This work is ongoing, but the partnership with GIAC demonstrates what becomes possible when Aboriginal communities drive the process and when consultants position themselves as genuinely useful contributors rather than city-based outsiders who arrive, prescribe and depart. Partnerships and communication have been central to this work, not only with GIAC but also with many other service providers and organisations and individuals who we maintain regular contact with. Good practice in this space requires supporting local decision making, spending time building relationships and recognising that housing is not merely a technical task but a cultural, social and political one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akira. Okay, so we're moving into the question time of the sessions. We've heard very unique experiences of partnerships, and I'm picking up on very, very distinct themes within partnerships. I have a couple of questions. I may have lied to you all. I have a couple of questions. Alisi, I'll start with a question to you, particularly around the works and that you have been doing in Redfern as well. The partnership has obviously led to some economic prosperity, which is something that we've been talking about in community for a very long time and how we get there. Do you think partnerships of this nature are important to bridge that gap into economic prosperity, and how do we replicate what you're doing in your area?
Yes, I definitely think it's an incredible component of success, because we have to understand that we need to operate outside of ourselves as well, you know, to be able to achieve that success, particularly when there's a range of industries and pathways that people can go into. For example, I know the mindset of a lot of our people when they thought of the opportunities around the construction and the development were very limited to traffic control, carpentry apprenticeships. They didn't even realise that there were pathways into architecture and, you know, administrators and project managers. And so, you know, at the end of the project, we had people with advanced diplomas in project management and, you know, qualified apprentices in plumbing and carpentry. So I definitely think it's a very critical component of partnership and success.
Awesome, thank you. Did either of you have comment in relation to economic prosperity, or do we move into another question that I've got for you? Another question. The unique partnerships that all of you are working within, it raises some questions around how you enter into them and sort of where the balance of power is in relation to those partnerships as well. What did you find going into some of these partnerships? And I know, Simone, you're working predominantly in a First Nation space when you're working with Nungamaya. But is there some learnings from these partnerships when you're entering in them, and how you overcame some of the power imbalance conversations that may have come up?
That's a really good question, because it's something that you find quite often, and there's always going to be, I guess, like you mentioned, the power and struggle, especially when you're talking about working with government agencies who predominantly fund ACOs and other not-for-profit organisations. in regards to working with Noongar Maya, we had an existing relationship, and I think that's, you know, really integral to any partnership. There was a mutual respect, and although Perth is, you know, quite a big city, it is actually a small community. So having that relationship previous to made going into a partnership a lot easier. And what we're finding is, you know, continuously having those conversations with government agencies. There are some great people that work who are passionate about the work that we are doing, and continuing those conversations are, I think, key to creating some change in thinking and the way that government are, you know, commissioning new projects and things like that. So,
I can probably say one thing about power balance, and that is now we work exclusively for, you know, Aboriginal communities, and not quite exclusively for Aboriginal corporations, but we find, so we have worked for government and Aboriginal corporations, and we find, you know, when we're in these communities, these remote communities, if we have been engaged by the Aboriginal corporation, the process and the atmosphere is much better, it's much more successful than if we were directly engaged by government, for example. So I'm a big advocate for funding to flow through Aboriginal corporations. They have the authority in the community that we would otherwise not have. So I think the projects we've worked on, which are most successful, have that. We're engaged by those corporations.
Awesome. Akira, I have a question for you in relation to particularly the design as an architect, as you mentioned. During the partnerships you're working with First Nations communities, Aboriginal communities, what have you taken away from the way that they see their developments being designed for community that you feel need to be replicated or everyone can benefit from? Are there elements of those conversations that you're now applying or could be applied to different housing models across the country?
Certainly to other Aboriginal housing projects, whether they're located in regional or urban places. I think the lessons are still the same, centering the tenant, the family, first, and empowering them to make decisions about their house. So that begins with, you know, us as architects sharing some technical expertise in a way which is sort of easily digested and empowering to then make those decisions. I mean, in terms of the design of houses, we do see lots of commonalities across different communities and different parts of the state and other states. But we also see that every community is different. Their culture, but also every house within that community is different. So there's no one size fits all, I think is the point. And everybody needs to have some input into their own home. And when you do that, you get the best result.
Awesome, thank you. They're my questions at the moment. I probably will have more later, but I'm interested, is there anybody who might have a question for the panellists? We still have quite a bit of time, so I'm opening it up to anybody. If you just pop your hand up, we can get one of the mic runners to come down to you. Are we nervous in a smaller group? We've got one right up the back there.
Hey Shaun, how you going, brother? This is for Alisi. How are you, sis? My question is, we saw in your video that firstly acknowledge AHC is one of the oldest Aboriginal community housing providers throughout Australia. So just want to put that out there and reference that for everybody in the room. But my question is, we saw on the video from Uncle Mick, you've been around 50 odd years. It took 35 years to get to this point. How does AHC reconcile or resolve within themselves the degrees of disparity that's existing between the Aboriginal housing sector and the non-Aboriginal housing sector in getting the developments required to best service our communities, noting that it took 35 years?
Great question. I think the first thing I'll say to that is acknowledging the lived experience we've had through the Pemaway journey and really leveraging off that platform of excellence, not just for our own mob to unpack what self-determination means from that level, but to really drive that advocacy piece with both state and Commonwealth government. Despite whether they want to listen or not, I seem to be the thorn in a lot of the government side these days, but I think just really driving, and I guess Uncle Mick Mundine's been an incredible mentor for me in doing that and carrying this, you know, for the last 50 years of service this year, bless him. But really, I guess, yeah, leveraging off the lived experience, but also the success. I never forget, 10 years ago, we couldn't get people to the table to come and have a cup of tea or even engage in conversation. Now, respectfully, to some of the delegates and ministers, I'm not available. Maybe next week. Like, it's just incredible how the tide turns when you actually start walking determination and walking success. And I would say further to that is, as we're having these conversations, we're not just having the conversation, we're still building. We're still scaling, we're still consulting, we're still uplifting and encouraging others to do the same. And I guess in the midst of us doing that, nobody can kind of dictate. And that's what that self-governance is about, right? It's the application of not having external authorities dictate your future. And for us, that's critically important. And you just keep going. Like, I mean, Uncle Mick's nearly 80 and he's 50 years of service and he reckons he's got another 30 years to go, so.
I think that comes back to the partnership arrangement as well, as when we talk about the balance of power, making sure that communities at the centre, their voices are being heard and what they need and how they're delivering those things is so much more important than... It's funny that when we think about partnership as community, we generally don't think about partnerships. We think we're building a relationship with you. So it's nice to see the rest of the community catching up of building relationships as opposed to just entering into partnerships. Do we have another question? Yeah, we have a question down here at the front. Uncle over here, blue shirt, and we have one down the front. So we'll come down here first, whilst we get a mic down here. Yeah.
Hey, this is Alison from QDN. Just wondering, I heard you guys talking about remote communities. Just wondering if you know of anyone in Queensland remote communities building like housing, or is it just in other states?
I'm not entirely sure. So the question was, do you know any other community-controlled organisations building in Queensland and things like that we could tap into? We could follow that up for you and actually give you some information. Yep, they're great. And we've got a question down here.
Darryl Wright from Campbelltown Thurrock Aboriginal Corporation, which is Aboriginal Medical Service. Firstly, what I want to say, congratulations to the mob there for the continued involvement. And in the early part of my life in Sydney, I spent a lot of hours on the board at Redfern, and I know all the fight and understanding. I think the hardest thing they do in the community is to convince our community about partnerships, how important partnership, and it's very, very hard. And I know what all the stuff that was going on in Redfern, but you know, we had a great bloke there, Mickey Mundine, and then our on board members changing and chopping around. And we thought, and a lot of times there we're going to lose it because they wanted to take it off us. And then the community got together. But even like with the Aboriginal Medical Service, we're growing, and we're making within our review that you're making your clients healthy, but they're going back into unsuitable condition with houses. So what do? We have to look out and go outside the box. Then, but you've got to include your members, you've got to include your community, and you've got to include your board. And they're frightened of losing things, you know. It's easy, quite easy to lose things. But if you work hard and keep together and work with the board and the community and say, there's an advantage in this. And then finally, after 2 years convincing the board that these are sort of things, and it's partnerships. When you're doing partnership with the universities and other Aboriginal communities, and not only that, with the state government and Commonwealth government, you have to stand up to them because they'll take you away and do everything to you, especially with the university. And the data is so important to us. People got to understand how important data is for us. And anything we do with partnership, we have control, and that's what the Aboriginal community just have. So finally, we become a housing provider. And now we're growing. We've got about 160, 170 houses, but that's going to increase with good partnerships. So I want to congratulate you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Uncle Darryl, and I just want to take a moment to honour you because I know the work you've done. I'm one of your silent fans from Western Sydney in the heart of New South Wales, but it is. I think one of the biggest issues I know, even I've been with the housing company now 16 years, was the fear of partnerships because they had been let down even before my time, 50-something 2 years of operation. The amount of people that had the wrong intentions, ill agendas that would come in and try and buy the land, and even in my time, the amount of times I was bribed, I would have been a millionaire 5 times over by now. But I mean, it was because of those experiences that they have that fear of engaging in partnerships. But like, to just reiterate what Uncle Darryl said, the opportunity and the power that those genuine partnerships can unlock does literally benefit generations, and I think the Pemaway development speaks to that with a 99-year lease. Even with the multi-purpose hub in Thurrock there in Western Sydney, that model, people say, well, Alisi, why have you got the Change the Data initiative and you're tapping into other areas? The reality is our existing services that cater to the social disadvantaged in community are at capacity. And so where you've got existing Aboriginal community-controlled orgs, build the capacity. When government says, how do we help? Build the capacity of these existing ACOs that are in the area, that know the community, know how to work with our people, invest in that.
We've got Art over here. I knew you were going to ask a question. We're just down here in the middle. Could you just put your hand back up so the mic runners, there we go. We've got one coming from the other side.
Good morning, Leanne Caton, CEO of Aboriginal Housing NT, the peak body that looks after all the community housing providers across the Northern Territory, the Aboriginal community control ones. We're 18 months into a $4 billion agreement with the federal government and the NT government to build 3,000 houses across remote Northern Territory. And we're looking at employment pipelines, of course, because we want to see genuine apprenticeships come out of this so that we can have regional repairs and maintenance teams where people can work in their language groups. And because for generations, non-Aboriginal contractors have made a fortune out of providing services to Aboriginal communities. And for example, it costs $8,000 for a contractor to go to Docker River, which is on the corner of the pitlands, basically, South Australia, WA and NT border. And that's just to assess the problem. Then they go back and they get the parts and then there's more money. So we want to see that money going to local repairs and maintenance teams, hence the employment pipeline over 10 years. Apprenticeship, couple of years on the tool and then potential to start their own businesses. So we're actually looking and talking to education institutions and the government about who will employ these people. So it's probably going to land with Aboriginal Housing NT so that there's consistency and stability for apprentices who might be moving to various communities. But the other thing in relation to the partnership agreement that we have with the 2 tiers of government is that the Aboriginal caucus consists of 4 land councils and Aboriginal Housing NT. And we have made it very clear that we're not prepared to come to the table unless there's genuine partnerships We are not going to be the poor relations, and we're tired of being the poor relations. So we actually have a lot to do with setting the agenda. We have our pre-caucus, we have our pre-meetings where we, talk about the issues and have a consensus before we go into the joint steering committee meetings. One of the other things that I wanted to let you know was over that 10-year period, we're working with NOUS consultants to develop a 10-year strategic plan so that all public housing in remote Aboriginal communities will be transferred over to Aboriginal community control. So we've got a lot of work to do, as you've just mentioned, in increasing the capacity of the ACO sector out there in the communities to ensure that they're able to manage these properties. And the reason how this has come about is because we've had communities in the Territory that have taken the NT government to court for 2 to 3 years maintenance requests that weren't addressed, water dripping through lights in kitchens and dangerous stuff. We had an unfortunate situation where we lost a child who fell down a septic tank in a remote community. So there's horrendous living conditions out there, and we want to make sure that it goes Aboriginal housing in Aboriginal hands, basically. So that's where we're leading to, and we've got a lot of work to do over the next 8 years. Time is ticking away, and it's really inspiring for our people to know that this is happening. But there have been previous programs like this when the Commonwealth have put in a lot of money, and for instance, 200 million was spent before the first house was at lock-up stage. So we want all of this work transferred over to Aboriginal community control, and we're actually seeking direct funding. That's what we're negotiating with the feds for, direct funding, so there aren't all these people taking cuts out of the money before it hits the ground. So well done to what you're doing. I have been over to Redfern years ago when I worked in community housing over here in WA. I'm very impressed, very proud for you guys. So yeah, wonderful work and all the best. Thank you.
All right, do we have some other questions? Yes? Yeah, if you just leave your hand up just so the mic runners can see that you're around. And we have another one up there as well. So we'll start over here and then up to the back if that's okay.
Hi, my name's Dylan Kroll. I'm a Board of Director for Thurrock Aboriginal Corporation AMS and one of the founding members and Board of Directors for Thurrock Aboriginal Housing Corporation. One of the things I want to talk about, we are always talking about how long everything takes us, 20 years, 30 years. And how old all of our old people are who are still doing this fight. And I think we focus on our partnerships, we focus on a lot of things, but sometimes we forget that we need to bring our youth along for that journey as well. So I actually want to talk about one of the things that Uncle Darryl introduced at Thurrock. So, and this is great for any Aboriginal ACOs in this room. Our board for our AMS has a dedicated youth position. That's how I was able to get established in my role in my community on my board. So we actually have a role that can only be filled by someone under 25, and that's in our constitution. And I was the second person to fill that position. 15 years later, I'm still sitting on the board. So a great work that we're all doing, but I think we need to give that opportunity for our youth to come along and sit in these board meetings and carry that story along so nothing gets lost in 30 years when our old people are gone. Thank you, and congratulations all.
Thanks.
Hi, my name's Jack Panton. I'm from Affordable Housing Solutions. We're a consultancy company. We're very privileged to be doing some work for some Aboriginal community-controlled organisations in Victoria, 2 in particular, and the projects that we're working on are they're larger master plan projects, and so they've potential to incorporate some additional stock above and beyond the Aboriginal housing that potentially present economic opportunities for those organisations. And so, Alisi, I'm super interested in the work you've been doing, and congratulations on that Pembroke project. That just sounds incredible. Wondering if what we can learn in terms of some of the ingredients of success in that project, especially around the product mix, so Indigenous housing, but a social, affordable, private, and how much Indigenous is in that, and also some of the other economic benefits that you've been able to drive out of those projects. Are there 2 or 3 pearls of wisdom you can give to us that we might be able to translate into other projects? Thanks.
Definitely. I'd firstly say clear vision. The incredible thing with Uncle Mick is the vision didn't change for the last 35 years, and that was to redevelop the block, to remove all the crime and drugs and all the, as he said in his own words, all the evilness from that place, and redevelop a strong, thriving, Aboriginal community in that place, which we've done. I guess one of the pearls outside of just echoing the collaboration and partnership to the economic advancement point was understanding the diversification of income. I said, even if we weren't in the situation we're in where we had no other choice because we didn't have anything to offset the subsidies, having that mixed use and that diversification of income enables that succession. I was persecuted many years ago. I run my own business as I have for the last 15 years when I was trying to change the narrative of a lot of our mob to not rely solely on the government. And I would always say that for us to have sustainable social outcomes, you need commercially viable vehicles. And we've been able to adapt that model now into the Aboriginal Housing Company, and that's, I guess, what drives that. So, if we were to have another flow of COVID or something else were to happen where we unfortunately seen a lot of our critical services doors close because they just didn't have any more funding to operate, you've got those commercially viable engines that could continue to run. Having that mixed-use development with multiple revenue streams enabled us to do that, and will continue into the future.
Awesome. Have we got any more questions? Yep, question up the back.
Thanks very much. Look, wonderful panel. Thank you so much. Passion goes a long way. Peter Nelson from the Office of the Queensland Government Architect. Look, this is an unsexy funding and procurement question, maybe to Akira. How do we collectively move away from valuing upfront capital costs to better value whole of life costs with a focus on health, maintenance and employment? How do we change the dial?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a sort of ongoing challenge. A house that is designed well and is robust and suits the climate and the tenant and has longevity, it costs a lot more than maybe what the sort of typical solutions are now. So I think there's been a sort of a shift in government, certainly, that they recognise this, and they know there is a value in thinking about cost over a longer period of time. Maintenance costs on housing, certainly in remote communities and other Aboriginal communities, is huge, and I suppose there are some savings to make if in the beginning the house was designed well and it was built well. So life cycle, we talk a lot about life cycle costs when we're in the sort of design stages, but it's sort of quite hard to convince people to spend more upfront. There's always budgets and there's always not enough money. So when, you tell your client you're going to get 3 new houses for this amount of money, there's sort of jaw drops and they say, can you just spread it out over six more houses? Yeah, we're big advocates in spending more upfront and doing it properly the first time. I'm not sure that really answered your question.
All right. Other questions? No? Would the three of you like to share some final thoughts or some learnings or a call to action, I guess, for both our own communities but as well as the sector broadly on how you enter into partnerships and what the important things to remember when you go into those partnerships are?
Probably for us it would be reiterating the importance of the power in those meaningful collaboration pieces. We see the private sector, we see government doing it every day. You look at the pipeline of infrastructure and development that is happening across this country through collaborations, and I think as a nation and as community and people, if we start to lead that with each other, we will start to see the change. We've been so used to working in our own silos that there's not enough of that happening. And I think for me it would be for us as people to start working and leading that collaboration piece as mob.
I would say centre Aboriginal people, let them make decisions that ultimately affect them. They are best placed to make those decisions. And us as consultants need to be aware of that and sensitive to that.
Yeah, I'm hearing from a number of the comments here, and what Alisi, said is that actually as Aboriginal corporations and organisations and services, if we can work better together to be able to lead the change, you know, we don't have to rely on government and other mainstream services to lead the way. You know, we can do it ourselves, but it's something that I think we have to get better at, and I think that's just echoing what you've kind of said.
Awesome, thank you. A final thought from me as well before we close up. I know we're a little bit early, but I think everybody can smell the food that's coming wafting in from outside. There's been a couple of comments today that I've heard about capacity building and capacity within our community. So I'm going to challenge not only community in the room, you have the capacity, it's just not recognised. And for non-First Nations community sector in the room, it's not building our capacity, it's recognise the capacity that we have in community already to actually make those decisions and change the way that we operate. And for community in the room, the partnerships, you know you have the capacity to enter in those partnerships. We've all been told off for making a wrong cup of tea and getting it right. So let's just focus in on the fact that we know how to do this stuff. I would like to thank our amazing panellists here, amazing conversations and some of the deep thinking that has to go into the way that we do partnerships, but also partnerships that actually go differently than what we are used to talking about partnerships. We're talking about partnerships for economic prosperity. We're talking about partnerships for, you know, architectural design and the way that you deliver community solutions. And we have partnerships designed around social delivery systems that need to be happening. These partnerships need to be happening at the same time. So we can't focus in on one partnership over the other. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful having the conversation, and you're all free to go.